And I think the counter to that, not the opposite of that, but the counter to that is the Christian value of service, of love, of sacrifice, that actually we give up our rights for the sake of others. And I think that's sacrificing yourself for the sake of others is also an American value, and your respect for the military and those in service in that way. But on a cultural level, I think that's something we need to raise our kids with, so that they don't think what I want to do with my life is my choice and no one else can say what they, that we actually want our kids to be raised with an idea that we open our homes, we sacrifice, we give up our rights for the sake of those in need. And so if they ever get pregnant themselves in a situation where they don't want to be pregnant, they won't automatically think with the filter of, this is my body, my choice. They'll think with the filter of, now this is the moment where I need to sacrifice for the sake of someone in need. Yeah. So, and then the last thing I'd say is, don't be afraid to talk to your kids about abortion. So I've had age-appropriate conversations with my 5-year-old about abortion, and it's you handle it carefully, but it's not. You don't have to wait until they're teenagers, maybe, until you brace the subject. Kids understand the concept of death. They understand the concept of a child in the womb, and they understand the concept of protecting. And so you can speak to them about that issue before the world does. I think that's the most important thing.
Very, very good tips. So, what can churches do towards that same end?
Yeah, I think they need to be bold on teaching on those topics. I know a lot of churches do have a Life Sunday sort of where they talk about abortion once a year. I think churches do need to be bold speaking about the topic of abortion, partly because you can't just presume that your congregation will all agree. There'll be a lot of people who've just come in from the world and become Christians and just won't think about it, and they won't know what the Christian perspective is on this topic. So we need to educate people. The church needs to not just talk about abortion, though, but talk about those ideas that are, I think, the scaffolding around the topic of abortion, which is the foundation of it, which is the idea that we're all made in God's image, and that it reflects how we treat each other and how we love each other, and how we live a life of sacrifice and love and service of others rather than thinking of ourselves. And churches can resource both parents who are trying to raise their kids with these ideas, because they just might not know how to think about it. But especially, I think, the real battleground is youth. So that they're the ones who are being assaulted more daily on. They're the ones who are more engaged with the world and maybe going to, depending what school they go to, maybe being taught about these issues. And they're the ones that need to be really resourced to grapple with the sort of the peer pressure to just support the pro-choice movement. And yeah, often we just presume that our kids will be pro-life without really resourcing them to grapple with the arguments and that may be thrown their way, especially as they grow up.
That's a good word. So next question then would be, with families again, how can families be truly pro-life and not just anti-abortion?
Yeah, I think it's about seeing that the issue is not just that abortion is legal. That's a very simplistic understanding of the issue, that there's a whole range of issues and that we've talked about, which, how we treat each other, how we see each other, how we understand humanity. And those bigger issues, abortion is just one of the many fruit that comes from that. So one of the other fruits is have a home that is a truly pro-life home, I would say, is a home that's hospitable, that welcomes everyone, no matter no matter what they look like and no matter what their ability is. It's about treating, the disabled person in your congregation or your neighbor or something like that with, exactly the same welcome and dignity and everything that you have for everyone else. It's, I think you create that culture of service and love and hospitality and sacrifice that feeds into a home that, that is about life and caring for people and loving both the mothers and children. I think that's what a pro-life home should look like.
That's good.
Simon, how can Christian families help women who they would have a pregnancy that they were not looking to have?
Well, it may depend very much on where you are. It's hard to say. But in terms of practical things, is I would look for what crisis pregnancy centres and support networks there are in your area and support them. Sometimes they're doing it really tough financially. I know there's only a couple, there's only a very few organisations in my whole state. And so my wife and I have financially supported them and, given them the resources so that they can give those resources to women seeking help. And I think we should support government initiatives to help women in need as well. But on a personal level, it's just if there's someone who is facing a crisis pregnancy, then be pro-life, support them, remember those three things. It's not just about being illegal, it's being unnecessary and it's being unthinkable. And so help with the unnecessary one. Make it so that, even if it means invite them into your home so that they live with you for that 9 months, support, actually go out of our way to offer practical help to support women in need if they ever come across your path. And if you don't know any, then make sure you support crisis pregnancy centres. And the last thing you can do, which is much harder in my state, is consider adoption and consider fostering, because that's a way that relieves the burden. If women really feel like they can't raise their own children and they have chosen not to abort, then we need to make sure we're there as a community to support and provide a space for those children to be raised.
That's great. We've got a member of our church who actually runs a crisis pregnancy center, and she was telling me about this young lady who was in their home. You're just telling me, and the details that she was talking. The girl got mad and ran out and slammed the door, broke a glass thing. It was just sort of another day, and it would have been a pretty big inconvenience and an expensive one, and just what her and her husband deal with. Just doing it out of love.
Yeah, and I think we're very protective of our homes. We can go out there and love people out in the world, but our home is our castle. Mm-hmm. Our home is our sanctuary. And I think we need to get over that a little bit. We need to work out how we survive with the cost of loving. How do you replenish yourself? But our homes need to be as open as possible. And there's lots of factors that may make that difficult, especially if you've got children and things like that. But one of the things I love about my wife is that we both know that if someone needs help, she won't need to ring me and ask, can this person stay the night? Or can this person... We just have a policy of yes in our home. Someone needs to come over for dinner. Doesn't matter how... The other person maybe had a rough day and tired and stuff, but we have just a general policy of yes. If it's all terrible, then the other person will go, well, look, I can't cope. I'm going to eat in the other room. But we have a general policy of the door is open, and this is not our home. Christ has given us this home to love both our family and others. So I think that's a wonderful thing for our kids to actually grow up knowing that it's not their toys and it's not their room and it's not our kitchen table. It's, that God's given it to us to bless others as well.
Yeah, that's good. Simon, we've seen how we can support those who are pregnant, those who have unwanted pregnancies, which I think is so important. And I appreciated so much what you said there, especially about the kind of the open door mentality, because I think we can't separate, how we perceive the ills of the world with how we act as individual Christians. But how can families today help pro-life causes in the ways like you do?
Yeah, I think it's worth, first of all, knowing what the pro-life movement or activism or causes are in your area, or maybe even in your country, and supporting them, whether that's turning up for a peaceful march, which I think, as much as it doesn't do, I don't think protests do a lot, but I think what they do is say something. If no one turns up for a march, that says something, right? Whereas if thousands of people turn up for a march, that says something. And politicians are often looking to to how much of a voice there is on an issue to see whether they'll vote one way or another, looking to their constituents. And so it's worth making sure the pro-life voice is heard. Writing to our politicians, making sure they understand that you want them to vote a certain way on certain topics. But again, as we talked about, it's not just a legislative issue at all. And if all the politicians voted all the laws that we would like in, that wouldn't actually solve the problem, because it's actually how we think about humanity, I think, is one of the big issues. And so how can we help pro-life causes is, one, being a light yourself, making sure you and your family are a light, that you're not ashamed to talk about this issue, that you're educated as best as you can be on this issue, and as appropriate, that you talk about this issue with people in a way that's respectful, in a way that's interested in their perspective, that's not non-combative, where the goal is actually having healthy conversation and understanding other people's perspectives, and acknowledging that you would like them to change their mind, or encouraging them to, but engaging in good conversation. So I think there's lots we can do individually and as a church community, or as a social community, and as on a political level as well.
It's good. Sorry, I just want to add to that, I think it is so interesting you bring that up. I was actually watching a video that kind of went into abortion by state in the United States, and what are some things that actually curbed abortion. And this study actually found that a state that went to work really helping pregnant women and really that finding ways to support them, even while they allowed pro-life centers to, be very avert that this is wrong and foolish choices, was far more effective at reducing abortion rates than, a state that happened to just kind of really focus on very strict laws, which really fascinated me. And I think says a lot to how, this is not just, shaking a fist, but this is about a more really dynamic engaging with the realities of why this is a problem at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've, if we've learned anything, that if you just have prohibition, it doesn't work. Like, if you just build fences to stop people trying to do the wrong thing, people will just look for holes in the fence. Like, it doesn't just help to just try and make it hard for people to do something that they want to do. We have to address why are people driven to it. And sometimes, you can't solve that. You could have all the resources in the world and someone just says, I just don't want to have another kid, and I don't care if it's a human being. And there's little we can do with that. But if one state cracks down, a lot of people will just go to the next state if they can. So we need to actually engage with the culture as well as the legislation.
Yeah, that was a good point. Well, Simon, we do appreciate the time today. If listeners